that there can never be a situation where government says it does not know what is happening. I am not in charge of security docket. I'm only in charge of public service and human capital development. When I create, you know that. But there is collective responsibility. We must all own up to our own deficiencies where they have been pointed out or where they occur. And therefore, I fully agree with the sentiments expressed. We cannot be here saying the great things that a young soul like Eric, what he has done, and then on the next day we are taking them and we don't know, and they are being taken all over and we don't know where they are, who is taking them. We cannot say we don't know. We are government. We are government. We are government. I mean, I'm actually surprised. I'm told most of the administrators have skipped, but never mind. Never live by fear. Never live by fear. Yeah? Because we are here as a country. We are here today to celebrate the life of this very brilliant young man.
The air crackled with tension. A hush fell over the room as Cabinet Secretary Justin Muturi stepped up to the podium. His face, normally etched with composure, was a mask of barely suppressed fury. This was not a routine press briefing. This was a father's desperate plea for justice, a nation's shame laid bare. Muturi, known for his measured words, didn't mince them this time. His voice, heavy with emotion, echoed through the hall as he condemned the government's inaction in the face of a rising tide of abductions. Young Kenyans, voices of dissent, were vanishing into thin air. Their families, left clinging to fading hopes, were met with a wall of silence. Muturi's words cut deep, for they came from a place of profound personal pain. His own son Leslie had been swallowed by the same darkness just months before. Snatched away during anti-government protests, Leslie's disappearance became a chilling symbol of the government's growing intolerance of dissent. For over 6 agonizing months, Muturi and his family endured a living nightmare. The fear, the uncertainty, the gnawing emptiness, it was a pain no parent should have to bear. And yet, they bore it, clinging to the hope of Leslie's return. Finally, after an eternity of silence, Leslie reappeared. Released without explanation, without charges, he bore the scars of his ordeal. But for every Leslie who returned, countless others remained lost in the shadows, their voices silenced, their families shattered. Muturi's own experience had laid bare the terrifying reality of Kenya's descent into lawlessness. Even he, a high-ranking government official, a man accustomed to the corridors of power, had been powerless to protect his own flesh and blood. What hope, then, for ordinary Kenyans?
Despite making several requests, I was unable to trace my son, and I made demands to all the levels of the security apparatus of the country. Now, more than 6 months later, after that ordeal and the release of my son by unknown forces, he has not been charged with any offense, and the government at all levels has not been able to give me any explanation or reasons as to his abduction by hooded armed gangsters. Ladies and gentlemen, I have taken this unusual, the security sector has said that they are not involved in the abductions, but interestingly, they have failed to stop them as they are happening in full public glare. The president has equally said that he would want to see the abductions end. Kenyans want to know how many of our youths have been taken in since the abduction started, how many have been released, how many are still being held, and where it is that they are being held. On Friday last week, to wit the 3rd of January, at a funeral in Embu, I stated categorically that it was not possible for the government to say that they did not know anything about the abductions, because that amounts to shunning its responsibility on accountability. That is why I took the issue with a statement made by the Inspector General of Police that he did not know where the abductees are. In my view, the government cannot be excused for abdicating its duty of protecting the lives and property of the people of Kenya. I note that after my statement in Embu on Friday last week, a number of the youths that had been abducted and held incommunicado have been released. But from the reports that we see every day, there are still many that are still being held. The cardinal duty of the state and the government is to protect the lives and livelihood of its citizens, and cannot claim to be unaware of such serious breaches of the rights of Kenyans to live free from wrongful confinement and the violation of their inalienable right to life. Therefore, the security forces should arrest and bring to book all those that are involved in the abductions without fail, and all the young people being held in illegal captivity should immediately be freed. I'm fully aware of the doctrine of collective responsibility of cabinets. But since I'm also a victim of the abductions and serving in this government, I've not gotten any answers as to why my son was abducted, held incommunicado, and nobody gave any reasons for that abduction. I have taken this unusual step so that the matter of abductions and or extrajudicial activities being committed by whomever can now be honestly and robustly debated in the country with a view to finding a lasting solution to this scourge, which, if left unchecked, has the potential to plunge the country into chaos and anarchy. We cannot live in fear in a democratic country. Let Kenyans be. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Muturi's position within the government made the silence from security agencies even more deafening. As Attorney General and a member of the National Security Council, he had occupied a position of considerable influence, yet even his pleas for information, for action, were met with a chilling indifference. The very institutions tasked with upholding the law, with protecting citizens, had become shrouded in a veil of secrecy. Their silence spoke volumes, hinting at a sinister truth that sent shivers down the spines of ordinary Kenyans. The Ruto administration, once lauded as a beacon of hope, now stood accused of perpetrating the very evils it had vowed to eradicate. The echoes of their campaign promises, pledging security and justice for all, rang hollow in the ears of those who had lost loved ones to the shadows. Muturi, his voice trembling with barely suppressed rage, accused the government of hypocrisy. How could they, who had so vehemently condemned the disappearances and extrajudicial killings under previous regimes, now stand idly by as the same horrors unfolded on their watch?
Because somebody had set the pace for us. This brother of mine here, Lenny Kifuti. And therefore, I pleaded with my father. I told him, no, please. Umepita unaweza kwenda Siakago, unaweza kwenda Kifuti. No, I'm sorry. I said, I am going to repeat. Because I must go to Kangaroo. I wanted to go to say this, Your Grace, because I am so deeply rooted in the Anglican Church it runs deep in my veins. And the same I know with this brother of mine here. And by grace of God, the year that followed, and I was very sure, I was very, very sure I was going to go. And indeed I went. Another coincidence happened, Your Grace. Lenny alipomaliza form 4 akaenda Kianyaga. That is, now he now has another schoolmate here in the name of His Excellency, the former Deputy President. Coincidences, yeah? But I'm saying this because I read and I listened to what the king said yesterday about Eric. In your time, there gets to a point when there's somebody who sets the pace. A person sets the pace for the rest. And you never know in life. It just opens up like that. I want to say this, my brother, Lenny. No matter what we say, I know that I understand the pain. Eric's wife, I understand the pain. Hitler. And you know, I don't want to say, no, if I start giving stories, it will be too much, because then I'll go back to 1983 when I attended the wedding of Hilda and Lenny. At that time, I was a young magistrate in Anakraito. You could have seen me trying to buy what I consider to be a very good suit with some material bought from smuggled goods from Uganda. Let me say, I am not here to defend anything that has been said is wrong or has happened. In fact, I want to associate myself with the sentiments expressed.
Muturi's public outburst was not an isolated incident. It was a crack in the carefully constructed facade of unity within the cabinet, a sign of the growing dissent within the ranks. Whispers of discontent, of unease at the government's heavy-handed tactics had been circulating for months. Muturi's words, spoken with the raw honesty of a father robbed of his son's future, gave voice to those whispers, transforming them into a roar that could no longer be ignored. The doctrine of collective responsibility, so often invoked to enforce a code of silence, seemed to crumble in the face of such blatant injustice. Muturi, while acknowledging his position within the government, made it clear that his conscience, his duty as a father, superseded any political allegiance. He demanded answers, not for himself, but for the countless families torn apart by the scourge of abductions. His words were a challenge, not just to the government, but to his fellow cabinet members. Would they too find their voices, or would they remain complicit in the face of tyranny?
Thank you. This is a gentleman from the states for being able to be here at this hour. I have a very brief statement to make regarding some pertinent issues that are happening in the country. And in order to contextualize it, permit me to read it as I have put it in black and white. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear countrymen, I've been quiet for some time now, and many people have been asking me where the country is heading and where we are, and so I would like to state as follows. I joined the Kenya Kwanza coalition owing to the fact that the principles that they espoused are in tandem with the principles of the party I belong to, namely the Democratic Party of Kenya. Many friends and political colleagues at the time warned me against joining the coalition But at a personal level, I was persuaded that would be driven by the ideals and the values that the coalition stated as a hustler nation to do the best for the people of Kenya. One of the things we had accused the past regimes of was the existence of disappearances and extrajudicial killings of Kenyans, and we vowed that we would never, at our watch, condone or allow such. We stated this time and time again in the lead up to the last general election. Today, there has been a number of abductions and in some cases unexplained deaths since the Gen Z revolts of June last year. And it is unfortunate as most of the people being abducted and or killed are our youth, leaving the parents, relatives, and friends, other family members in a state of confusion and loss. I have personally served as my son was abducted and disappeared, and I was not sure whether he was alive or dead, making us anxious and leaving me and my wife and the rest of the family in turmoil. It must be remembered that at that time, I was the serving Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya, and as is well known, a member of the National Security Council as comprised under Article 240 of the Constitution.
Despite his scathing indictment of the government's inaction, Muturi stopped short of accusing them directly. He had no evidence, he admitted, of government-sanctioned abductions. But the lack of evidence, he argued, was in itself an indictment. The government's refusal to investigate, to be transparent about the fate of those who had vanished, spoke volumes. It was a tacit admission that they had something to hide. His appeal then was not just for justice but for accountability. He demanded to know the truth: how many had been taken, how many had been released, and how many remained trapped in the abyss, their fate unknown. Muturi's words resonated far beyond the confines of that press briefing room. They struck a chord with a nation weary of fear, of silence, of the gnawing suspicion that their government was no longer on their side. His call for justice, for transparency, for a return to the principles of human decency was a rallying cry. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can flicker in the most unexpected of places. And sometimes all it takes is a single voice speaking truth to power to ignite a fire for change.